You were never really part of this family anyway. Ask your mother why. My father said that to me at Easter dinner. 22 people at the table. My 6-year-old daughter sitting 3 chairs away. The ham was still being carved. Mom dropped her fork. Not dramatically. It just slipped. That tiny sound was louder than anything Dad had ever said to me, because it confirmed something I didn't even know needed confirming. But here's what no one expected. Grandma Ruth, 82 years old, barely 5 feet tall, stood up from the far end of the table. She reached into that cracked leather purse she's carried since 1987. She pulled out a yellowed envelope and said 7 words that ended 25 years of lies. What was in that envelope changed everything. Not just for me. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're listening from. My name is Wanda. I'm 32, and this is what happened when my family finally ran out of secrets. Now let me take you back to the week before Easter, the week my father started planning his announcement. I work the night shift at Mayfair General, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 3 nights a week, sometimes 4. I'm a nurse in the medical surgical unit. I've been doing it for 6 years. You get used to the hours. You never get used to the tired. My daughter Lily is 6. She has my jaw and my stubbornness, and a laugh that sounds like a screen door in summer. Her father moved to Oregon 2 years ago. He sends a check, sometimes. So it's me and Lily, and we live in a studio apartment 12 minutes from the house I grew up in, the Thornton House on Linden Street. That house is a 2-story wood frame with a wraparound porch and a magnolia tree my grandfather Harold planted the year he and Grandma Ruth moved in. 1965. They bought it with cash from his GI Bill. 3 bedrooms upstairs. Kitchen with the original tile. The kind of house people in Collier, Georgia, point at and say, "That's been in the family." My parents, Gerald and Denise, live on the main floor. My brother Travis has the big room upstairs. He's 29. He's never paid a dime of rent. Every night I work, I drive Lily to Grandma Ruth's. Ruth puts her in the guest bed, reads to her from the same primers she used when she taught 2nd grade. In the morning, I pick Lily up, make her breakfast, sleep 4 hours, and do it again. It's not an arrangement anyone signed. It's just how it works. And my father hates it. He said it once in front of Travis while I was dropping Lily off. "She drops that kid here like it's free daycare, but she's not even..." He stopped. He always stopped. I'd been hearing that unfinished sentence my entire life, until Easter. Grandma Ruth kept a chair pulled out for Lily every night before I even knocked. A small wooden chair, painted yellow, that used to be mine when I was little. Ruth never said that. I just recognized the chip on the armrest from the time I dropped it off the porch at age 4. She read to Lily from old readers, the kind with Dick and Jane and sentences like "See Spot Run." Lily thought they were hilarious. Ruth thought Lily was the smartest child in Georgia. They had a deal. Aunt Jolene, my father's younger sister, 55, retired nurse, came by on the nights Ruth was too tired. Jolene lived alone in a duplex near the post office. She'd sit with Lily, braid her hair, let her watch one cartoon before bed. Jolene never asked me for money. She never asked me for anything. One night, about a year ago, Jolene said something while I was lacing up my shoes to leave. She wasn't looking at me. She was wiping down Ruth's kitchen counter. "You know your daddy's wrong about you, right?" I didn't ask what she meant. I was afraid of the answer, so I just said, "Thanks for watching, Lily," and drove to the hospital. I think about that a lot. I think about how many times I chose not to know. Grandma Ruth carried a brown leather purse everywhere, cracked along the clasp soft as a glove. Inside, her reading glasses, a lipstick she hadn't worn in years, a photo of Grandpa Harold in his army uniform, a photo of me the day I was born, and something else, something I didn't know about until that Easter Sunday. Grandma Ruth kept things in that purse the way other people keep things in safes. I just didn't know I was one of them. 2 weeks before Easter, my father called and told me to come to the house. Not asked, told. I drove over after dropping Lily at preschool. Gerald was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee he wasn't drinking. Denise was nowhere. Travis was at work, or what he called work, which was a part-time mechanic gig where he clocked maybe 20 hours a week. "Sit down," Gerald said. I sat. "Financial situation's changed," he said. If you want to keep bringing Lily here at night, you need to contribute more. I'd been paying him $400 a month. He called it a household contribution. I didn't live there. I hadn't lived there since I was 19, but I paid it because he said it covered utilities, groceries, wear and tear. I never argued. I just paid. How much more? I asked. $600. Dad, I already pay more than Travis, and I don't even live here. He looked at me the way he always looked at me, like I'd said something rude by stating a fact. Travis's family, that's different. I felt it in my ribs. That word again. Family. The way he said it, like a gate he could open or close. Then he leaned forward. If you can't manage it, I'll have to talk to Mama about the Lily situation. She's 82. It's a lot. There it was. The lever. Not guilt, not emotion. My daughter's nighttime care, the only thing holding my work schedule together. I said yes. $600. That evening, Travis walked through the living room while I was writing the check. He heard. He didn't say a word. He opened the fridge, took a beer, and went to the backyard. I later found out that $400 a month? Dad had been telling Mom it was $200. He pocketed the difference. Let me explain what that house meant. Not in dollars, in geography. Collier, Georgia, has one hospital, one elementary school, and no daycare open past 6 p.m. If I lost access to Grandma Ruth's house for Lily's overnights, I'd have to switch to day shifts, which meant a pay cut, fewer hours, and competing with nurses who had 10 more years of seniority. Or I'd have to hire a private sitter I couldn't afford, or I'd have to leave Collier entirely. That house wasn't just property. It was the only reason I could keep working nights, keep my RN differential, and keep Lily in a school where her teacher knew her name. My father knew that. He'd never said it out loud, but he knew. And then there was Travis. About a week before Easter, I stopped by Ruth's to pick up Lily's jacket and heard Travis on the phone in the hallway. He was talking to Megan, his girlfriend. Once the house is mine, Grandma can move to the back room, or Wanda can take her. He said it like he was discussing furniture. I stood in the doorway with Lily's pink jacket in my hand and didn't move. Travis didn't see me. He kept talking. Something about knocking out a wall upstairs, maybe renting it out. This was Ruth's house. She'd lived here 61 years. She planted every bush in that yard, and Travis was already remodeling it in his head. I didn't confront him. I put the jacket on Lily, buckled her in, and drove home. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, and I didn't know why. Anger, fear, both. But there was one thing Travis didn't know. One thing none of them knew. That house was never Dad's to give. 3 days before Easter, Aunt Jolene called me. It was late, past 9. Lily was already asleep at Ruth's. I was sitting on my kitchen floor eating cereal out of the box because I'd forgotten to buy milk. Jolene's voice was different, careful, like she was choosing each word before she let it out. Wanda, has your daddy ever mentioned anything about the house to you? The house? No. Why? Silence. I could hear her breathing. Just be there on Sunday and sit near Mama. Jolene, what's going on? I can't say more right now, but be there. Promise me. I promised. I didn't understand, but something in her voice made me write it down on a sticky note and press it to my bathroom mirror. Sunday, sit near Grandma. The next day, Saturday, I was at the Piggly Wiggly buying groceries for Easter dinner. I always cooked, every holiday for 12 years. Ham, mac and cheese, green bean casserole, biscuits, sweet tea, pecan pie. I'd start at 5 a.m. Easter morning. Nobody asked, nobody helped. It was just understood that Wanda would handle it. I was loading bags into the trunk when I saw my father coming out of the Harmon and Burke office on Main Street. He was carrying a large brown envelope, the stiff kind, legal-sized, tucked under his arm. He walked fast. He didn't see me. I called out, "Dad, what were you doing at the lawyer's?" He turned. His face went flat. "None of your business." He got in his truck and pulled away. I stood there in the parking lot holding 4 bags of groceries for a dinner I'd been cooking for this family every Easter for 12 years. I didn't have a free hand, literally or figuratively. I should have pushed harder. I didn't. Easter Sunday. I was up at 5 a.m. after a full night shift. 4 hours of sleep. My eyes burned, but the ham wouldn't season itself. I drove to the Thornton house with Lily still in pajamas, her Easter dress on a hanger in the back seat. By 6, I had the oven going. By 8, the mac and cheese was assembled. By 10, the casserole was in its dish, the biscuits were rising, and the sweet tea was steeping in the big glass jar Ruth kept on the counter since before I was born. Denise came into the kitchen around 9:30. She set out plates and napkins on the long table in the backyard. Took about 15 minutes, then sat down in the living room and turned on the TV. That was her contribution. Travis showed up at noon carrying a bottle of wine. $9. I know because the sticker was still on it. My father looked at the bottle and said, loud enough for the kitchen to hear, "Now that's a man who knows how to show up." I had 6 dishes on the counter. I'd been on my feet for 7 hours. Nobody said thank you. Lily helped me fold napkins for the outdoor table. She was careful about it, tucking each corner the way I showed her, pressing the crease with her small fingers. We set 22 places under the string lights on the back porch. Grandma Ruth came through the kitchen slowly, holding the door frame. She watched me and Lily working. She put her hand on my shoulder and said something I didn't understand at the time. "You look just like your daddy when he was good, baby." I smiled. I thought it was a compliment. I didn't understand that sentence until 3 hours later. By 5 o'clock, 22 people were seated around the long table on the back porch. Family, neighbors, church. Gerald sat at the head, white button-down shirt, which I'd never seen him wear to a family dinner. He usually wore flannel. Tonight he looked like a man with an agenda. He'd placed the brown legal envelope from Harmon and Burke under his chair. I noticed because I was carrying the ham platter past him and saw the corner sticking out. Denise sat to his left, quiet. She'd reapplied her lipstick twice in the last hour, which she only did when she was nervous. Travis sat across from her, Megan beside him. Megan wore a sundress and a smile that said she already knew something good was coming. Aunt Jolene was to my right. She'd saved the seat. On my left, Lily, in her yellow Easter dress, kicking her legs under the chair because her feet didn't touch the ground. Grandma Ruth sat at the opposite end of the table from Gerald, the matriarch's seat. She had her brown leather purse on her lap, not under her chair, not on the ground, on her lap, like she was at an airport waiting for a flight. Pastor Tom Davis, 70 years old, white-haired, calm as a lake, sat midway down the table. He'd been Harold's closest friend. Ruth had invited him personally. I thought that was just Ruth being Ruth. I didn't yet know it was strategy. Pastor Davis said grace. Everyone bowed their heads. I peeked. Gerald's eyes were open. He was looking at me, not at the food, not at God, at me. Then he stood up. "Before we dig in," he said, "I have an announcement." Everyone put down their forks, except Grandma Ruth. She kept eating her biscuit like she'd been expecting this. Gerald straightened his collar. He looked down the table the way a man looks at a room he thinks he owns. "I've made a decision about this house." The string lights hummed. Someone's ice clinked. "Travis is getting the house. I've had the papers drawn up." He said it the way you'd read a weather report. Flat, final. Travis looked up from his plate, half surprised, half like he'd been rehearsing this face in the mirror. Megan squeezed his hand under the table. Her smile tightened into something sharper. Satisfied. Uncle Ray, my father's older brother, set down his fork slowly. His wife Linda glanced at me, then away. Jolene picked up her sweet tea. She didn't drink it. She just held it. Gerald continued. "This house should stay with family." He paused, let the word hang. Real family. I felt it land, not in my chest, but somewhere deeper. Behind my ribs, where all the old bruises live. I looked at my mother. Denise was shredding her napkin into thin strips. Her eyes were locked on the table. Mrs. Mitchell, our neighbor of 30 years, sitting 2 seats from Gerald, cleared her throat quietly. Mr. Mitchell put his hand over hers. Pastor Davis folded his arms. His jaw moved slightly, the way it does when he's biting back words. I kept my voice even. "Dad, what do you mean real family?" Gerald turned his whole body toward me. He didn't whisper. He didn't lower his voice. He spoke at full volume, a man who wanted witnesses. "You know what I mean." 22 people heard it. 22 people felt the temperature drop on that porch. And he wasn't done. I didn't flinch. I set my hands flat on the table. No, Dad, say it clearly. He wanted me to back down. I could see it. The flicker behind his eyes, the slight lean forward, the expectation that I'd fold the way I always folded. 32 years of practice. Not tonight. Gerald looked at me, then at the table, then back at me. You were never really part of this family anyway. He tilted his head toward Denise. Ask your mother why. 2 seconds of absolute silence. No wind, no crickets, nothing. Then, clang. Denise's fork hit the porcelain plate and bounced onto the table. Her hand was still open, fingers curled around air. She didn't pick it up. She didn't look at anyone. Mrs. Mitchell inhaled sharply. Uncle Ray leaned back in his chair like he'd been pushed. Linda pressed her napkin to her mouth. Megan's smile disappeared. And then I heard it. The sound that broke me. Mommy? Lily was pulling my sleeve. Her yellow dress. Her small fingers. Her voice wobbling in that way it does right before the tears start. Mommy, are we not family? 22 people heard my 6-year-old daughter ask that. At a dinner table, on Easter Sunday, under string lights I'd hung myself that morning. Something shifted in me. Not rage, not sadness. A door closing. The last door. The one I'd been holding open for 32 years because I kept believing that if I just cooked enough dinners, paid enough money, showed up enough times, they'd let me in. That door closed. I looked at my father. My voice came out steady, quiet, final. You just said that in front of my daughter. Whatever you think you know, you don't get to do that. Okay, I need to pause here for a second. Because in that moment, sitting at that table, with my daughter pulling my sleeve, I had about 4 seconds to decide who I was going to be. The old Wanda would have picked up Lily and driven home crying. Something was different that night, and I think it had to do with what Aunt Jolene told me on the phone 3 days before. Let me ask you this. Why do you think my dad chose Easter dinner, in front of everyone, to say that? What was his play? Drop your theory in the comments. All right, let me tell you what happened next. I reached down and lifted Lily off her chair, carried her around the table to Jolene. Jolene didn't ask. She opened her arms. Lily buried her face in Jolene's shoulder, and Jolene held her like she'd been waiting to. I walked back to my seat. I didn't sit down. I stood. 22 faces stared at me, some pitying, some confused. A few, like Pastor Davis, steady and watching. You've been hinting at this my whole life, I said. So say it, right here, right now, all of it. Gerald laughed, short, dry, like a cough he didn't bother covering. I don't owe you an explanation. You just told 22 people I'm not part of this family. You owe everyone at this table an explanation. That one landed. I saw it. His shoulders shifted, his jaw tightened. He looked around the table, at the Mitchells, at Uncle Ray, at Pastor Davis, at the cousins who were suddenly fascinated by their plates. No one was backing him up. No one was nodding along. Gerald turned back to me. Fine. His voice dropped, but not to a whisper, to something rehearsed. Your mother told me the truth 25 years ago. You're not my biological daughter, someone else's blood. I raised you anyway. He spread his hands wide, like a man expecting applause. But this house is Thornton blood. A gasp, small, stifled, from Linda. Uncle Ray shook his head slowly. Mrs. Mitchell grabbed her husband's arm. At the far end of the table, Denise pushed her chair back. She wanted to leave, but Mrs. Mitchell was beside her, and the chairs were close, and there was nowhere to go. 25 years. He believed that for 25 years. Mom let him, and not a single word of it was true. Gerald turned to Denise. He pointed, actually pointed, like a prosecutor in a courtroom drama he'd seen on television. Tell her. Tell everyone what you told me in 2001. Denise's mouth opened, closed, opened again. She looked like a woman trying to speak underwater. It's complicated, Wanda. Complicated enough to ruin my life for 25 years? She flinched. Her eyes were wet, but the tears didn't fall. They just sat there, balanced. I made mistakes. Gerald slapped the table. See? She admits it. Travis dropped his fork. Different from Denise's drop. This one deliberate. Wait, so Wanda's not... She's not mine, Travis. Gerald's voice was almost triumphant now. Never was. That's why you get the house. Pastor Davis leaned forward. Gerald, this is not the place. Gerald wheeled on him. This is exactly the place, Pastor. My house, my family, my decision. And there it was. The 3 words that told you everything about my father, my house, my family, my decision. Everything belonged to him. People, property, truth. I looked at my mother one more time. I was giving her a chance. The last one she'd ever get from me at that table. Mom, look at me. She looked. Is it true? 3 seconds. 4. Her mouth trembled. I'm sorry, Wanda. She didn't deny it. She didn't explain. She just apologized. The way someone apologizes when they're not sorry for what they did, but sorry it finally caught up. At the far end of the table, Grandma Ruth set down her glass of water. She placed both hands flat on the table, and then, slowly, quietly, her right hand moved to the cracked leather purse on her lap. Her fingers found the clasp. Nobody noticed, except me. Jolene's voice cut through the silence like a knife through warm butter. Calm, almost casual. Jerry, one question. Gerald looked at his sister, annoyed. He was still riding the high of his announcement. You could see it, the way his chest was puffed, the way he held the edge of the table like it was a podium. Whose name is on the deed of this house? Gerald blinked. What kind of question is that? It's the family home. That's not what I asked. It's Dad's house. Dad left it to us. Jolene tilted her head. She had a way of doing that, making you feel like you'd just said something a child would say. Dad died in 2018. Did he leave a will transferring it to you? Silence again, but a different kind this time. Not shock, calculation. I watched Gerald's face do the math he'd apparently never done before. It was understood, he said. Jolene looked at me. Her eyes were soft, but her words weren't. Understood isn't a deed, Jerry. Mr. Mitchell turned to his wife. He whispered, but in the quiet it carried. That house is still in Ruth's name. 3 or 4 heads turned toward Grandma Ruth. She sat at her end of the table, still as a photograph. Her biscuit was gone. Her water glass was empty. Her hands were in her lap, on the purse. She hadn't said a single word all evening. I think that's the moment people started to realize Ruth's silence wasn't frailty. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't an old woman tuning out the drama. She'd been listening to every word, cataloging every sentence, waiting. My father had been giving away something that was never his, and Aunt Jolene had just lit the fuse. Gerald's face went red, not embarrassed red, cornered red. A man who'd planned every beat of this evening, and just realized someone was reading ahead. He slammed his palm on the table. Glasses shook. A tea pitcher wobbled. This is exactly what I'm talking about. He pointed at me. Every holiday. Drama. And it always comes back to her. He was pivoting. I'd seen this play before. When Gerald lost control of the facts, he reached for the feelings. Make it about tone. Make it about disruption. Make the quiet one look like the troublemaker. You want to know why I never treated you the same? His voice was loud now, stage loud, pitched to the back row. Because you're not the same. Your mother slept with another man. He jabbed his finger at me. You're the proof. Mrs. Mitchell covered her mouth. Linda turned away. One of the cousins, Ray's son Tyler, pushed back from the table and stood up, then sat down again, unsure where to go. I heard Lily whimper against Jolene's shoulder. Gerald turned to Pastor Davis, trying to find an ally. You knew Harold. You know this family. I'm doing what's right for the Thornton name. Pastor Davis looked at him for a long time. His voice was low and heavy. Gerald, I knew Harold, and I know Harold would not do this. Gerald ignored him. He reached under his chair and pulled out the brown envelope from Harmon and Burke. He slid out a stack of papers, deed transfer documents, and dropped them on the table with a thud. Travis, come sign. Travis stood halfway. His eyes moved around the table. 22 faces, not one of them encouraging. Megan tugged his sleeve. Maybe not right now, babe. Travis sat back down. Gerald was losing the room and he knew it, so he did what controlling men do when their audience slips. He grabbed for his witness. "Denise!" His voice cracked like a whip. Tell them what you told me when Wanda was 7. Denise was standing now, half behind her chair, gripping the back of it with both hands. Her knuckles were white. She looked like a woman standing on a ledge. She looked at me. I looked back. I gave her nothing. No rescue, no anger, just my face. Because I needed to see what she would choose, right here, in front of everyone. She swallowed. "I told your father something a long time ago, and She told me Wanda isn't mine." Gerald cut her off. Plain and simple. "Mom," my voice was steady. "Is it true?" Her chin trembled. Her eyes moved from me to Gerald to the table to the yard. Anywhere, everywhere, searching for an exit that didn't exist. "I'm sorry, Wanda." Not a denial, not the truth. An apology shaped like a confession. That's when I felt the ground tilt. Not because I believed my father. I didn't know what to believe. But because my mother, the woman who braided my hair every morning until I was 10, who drove me to nursing school orientation, who held Lily the day she was born, that woman looked me in the face and chose to protect the lie one more time. Then I heard a sound behind me, wood on wood, the slow groan of a chair being pushed back. I turned. Grandma Ruth was standing, both hands on the table, spine straight, 82 years old and rising like she hadn't stood up without help in 2 years. She stood up that night like she was 40, every head turned. 22 people watching a 5-foot woman at the end of a table hold the weight of a room. Ruth's left hand gripped the table's edge. Her right hand held the cracked leather purse. She didn't rush. She didn't shake. She just stood there, letting the silence do the work. "Sit down, Gerald." "Mama, this doesn't concern—" "I said sit down." Gerald sat, 59 years old, and the reflex was still there. The boy and the man, obeying before the thought caught up. Ruth unclasped the purse. She reached in and pulled out an envelope. Yellowed, creased, folded so many times the paper had gone soft at the edges. She held it up, not high, not dramatic, just enough for the table to see. 25 years I kept this." Her voice was clear, quiet but clear, the way a retired teacher speaks when the classroom finally goes still. 25 years I watched you treat that girl like she was nothing." She looked at Gerald, only Gerald. "I promised Harold I'd wait until you showed everyone who you really are." She let that sit. "You just did." She placed the envelope in the center of the table, right between the ham platter and the green bean casserole, right on top of a dinner I'd cooked since 5 that morning. "Open it, Gerald, or I will." No one breathed. I mean that literally. I could hear the string lights buzzing, the distant bark of a dog 3 houses down, the creak of Mr. Mitchell's chair as he leaned forward. But no breath, no air moving. Lily had stopped crying in Jolene's arms. She was watching her great-grandmother with wide eyes. My grandmother had carried that envelope for 25 years, not as a weapon, as a parachute, for me. Gerald stared at the envelope like it might bite him. His hand hovered, then grabbed it. He tore one end open, rough, impatient, and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Lined notebook paper. Blue ink, faded to gray in places. A letter. Ruth's voice was steady. "Read it out loud, Gerald, or hand it to Pastor Davis." Gerald didn't read it aloud. He read it to himself. His eyes tracked left to right, left to right. I watched his face change. Anger first, then confusion, then something I'd never seen on my father. Fear. His lips moved without sound. The paper trembled in his hand. Ruth spoke, not to Gerald, to the table. "That letter is from your wife, written to a man named Carl Jessup in 2001. She paused. "It says, and I'm quoting from memory because I've read it 100 times, he'll never find out about Travis. Gerald thinks the boy is his. That's all that matters." The words landed like stones dropped into a pond. I could feel the ripples hit every person at that table. Gerald looked up from the letter, looked at Denise. Denise was no longer behind her chair. She was standing at the edge of the porch, one hand on the railing, like a woman deciding whether to run. Travis spoke first. "What?" His voice cracked. "What about me?" Gerald's jaw worked. "This is fake." You faked this. Ruth didn't blink. That's your wife's handwriting, Gerald. You know it. Everyone at this table who's ever gotten a Christmas card from Denise knows it. Mrs. Mitchell looked at the letter in Gerald's shaking hand. She nodded, small, certain. That's her writing, she said quietly. But that wasn't everything in the envelope. Ruth reached into the envelope still in Gerald's hand and slid out a second piece of paper. This one was printed, clean, clinical, with a company logo at the top. After Harold passed, Ruth said, I ordered a DNA kit, the kind you buy online. You've seen the commercials. She addressed the table, not Gerald, like a teacher giving a lesson she'd prepared all semester. I swabbed myself, and one night when I was keeping Lily and Travis was sleeping upstairs, I took hair from his pillowcase. I used Gerald's old brush from the hall bathroom. She folded her hands. I mailed them in. 6 weeks later, I got the results. She paused. Let the room catch up. Gerald and Travis are not biologically related. Travis made a sound. Not a word, not a cry. Something between the two. His chair scraped back. Megan reached for his arm. He pulled away. Gerald stood up. His chair toppled behind him, cracking against the porch boards. You went behind my back. You went behind your daughter's back for 25 years, Gerald. Ruth's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Sit down. He didn't sit, but he didn't speak either. He stood there with the letter in one hand and the DNA results in the other, holding the two pieces of paper that had just dismantled his entire story. I looked at Grandma Ruth. She was already looking at me. She gave me a nod. Small, slow, the kind that says everything without a sound. I see you. I've always seen you. Across the table, Megan had left her seat. She stood on the porch steps, arms crossed, staring at the yard. Travis was gripping the edge of the table with both hands, staring at his own knuckles like he'd never seen them before. Wanda is Gerald's daughter. Travis is not. 25 years. Built on a lie, my mother told. Denise spoke from the edge of the porch, her back half turned to the table. Her voice was thin and high, like a wire about to snap. I was going to tell you. I was always going to tell you. My throat tightened. 25 years of always going to. You had 25 years, Mom. I was scared. She finally turned around, mascara streaked, hands shaking. If Gerald knew Travis wasn't his, he would have left. We would have lost everything. So you threw me under the bus instead. She flinched like I'd slapped her, but she didn't deny it. Gerald's voice came out broken, not angry now, shattered. So you let me believe. He couldn't finish. He looked at Travis. He looked at me. He looked at the deed transfer papers sitting on the table, useless as napkins. I treated her like... He stopped. His hand went to his mouth. He turned away from the table. For the first time in my life, I saw my father unable to complete a sentence, not because he was being cruel, but because the truth of what he'd done was too large to say aloud. Pastor Davis placed both hands flat on the table. Gerald, sit with this. Don't speak yet. Travis stood. He didn't look at anyone. He walked past Megan on the steps, through the back door, into the house. The screen door slammed, then silence. I stood in the middle of 22 people who now knew everything. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't feel relief or victory or rage. Just a long, heavy quiet, like the pause after a building falls, when the dust is still in the air and nobody knows yet what's left standing. My father had just learned that the daughter he rejected was his, and the son he worshipped was not. I want to pause here again because I know what some of you might be thinking. Poor Travis. And honestly, part of me thought that too. Travis didn't ask for any of this. He didn't know. He was living in a role our parents built for him, on a foundation made of lies. But here's my question for you. Do you think my mom actually believed the lie would hold forever? Or did she always know this day would come? I'd really love to hear your take. Drop it in the comments. All right. What happened in the next hour changed every relationship I have. Grandma Ruth sat back down, slowly. She picked up her glass of water and took a sip. Her hand was steady. Mine weren't. Now, she said, about this house. She looked at Gerald, who was still standing with the overturned chair behind him, the deed papers limp in his hand. This house is in my name, always has been. Harold and I bought it in 1965 with cash from his GI Bill. The deed is filed at the county clerk's office. She folded her hands on the table. You can check Monday morning. Gerald opened his mouth. Ruth didn't let him fill it. Your father wanted a lot of things, Gerald. He wanted you to be a decent man. A beat. We don't always get what we want. Uncle Ray exhaled hard through his nose. Linda put her hand on his knee. Ruth continued. That piece of paper you brought from the lawyer? It's worthless. You can't transfer what you don't own. Gerald looked down at the deed transfer. He stared at it for a long time. Then he set it on the table, gently, like it was something fragile. Because it was. His entire plan, printed on paper that meant nothing. This house stays in my name until I decide otherwise, Ruth said. And no one, not you, not Travis, not a lawyer on Main Street, changes that. Pastor Davis spoke softly. Ruth, Harold would be proud of you tonight. Ruth picked up her napkin and smoothed it on her lap. Harold's been telling me to do this for 8 years from wherever he is. I just needed Gerald to give me a reason in front of witnesses. She looked at Gerald. You gave me plenty. Ruth turned to me. Her eyes were softer now, but still sharp, the way old steel looks when the light hits it. Baby, this house was always going to be yours and Lily's after I'm gone. I have it in writing with my lawyer, not Harmon and Burke. She smiled faintly. I stood there. I felt 22 pairs of eyes. I felt the string lights on my skin. I felt Lily watching from Jolene's lap, and I shook my head. Grandma, I don't want the house. The table shifted. Not a gasp. Something subtler. A recalibration. Uncle Ray tilted his head. Mrs. Mitchell's eyebrows rose. Even Jolene looked surprised. I appreciate what you did tonight more than I can say. My voice held. I made it hold. But I'm not going to build my life on something that came from a fight at a dinner table. I want Lily to see me earn what we have. Ruth looked at me for a long time. Her chin dipped slowly. You sound like your grandfather. I walked to Jolene. I took Lily into my arms. She wrapped her legs around my waist and pressed her face into my neck. She smelled like biscuits and Jolene's lavender soap. I turned back to Gerald. He was still standing, still holding nothing. The deed was on the table. The letter was on the table. His story was on the ground. I'm your daughter, Dad. I said it clearly. No anger, no begging. I always was, but after tonight, I don't need you to believe it anymore. I carried Lily through the back door, through the kitchen that still smelled like the dinner I'd cooked since 5 a.m., past the counter where Ruth's tea jar sat, out the front door. I closed it behind me, gently. The drive home was 12 minutes. Lily fell asleep by minute 3, her head tilted against the car seat, one hand still clutching the collar of my blouse. I drove in silence. No radio, no phone, just the road and the sound of my daughter breathing. When I parked at the apartment, I sat in the car for a long time. My phone was vibrating on the passenger seat. I didn't look. Not yet. I carried Lily upstairs, laid her on my bed, pulled off her shoes, and covered her with the quilt Ruth had made for her 3rd birthday. Then I checked my phone. Jolene, I'm so proud of you, honey. Mr. Mitchell. Wanda, you are welcome at our table anytime. God bless you. 2 cousins. A number I didn't recognize that turned out to be Tyler's wife. A text from a woman at church I barely spoke to, saying she was praying for me. Nothing from Gerald, nothing from Denise. I set the phone on the counter, sat on the floor, and ate the rest of that cereal I'd been eating all week. No milk. I still hadn't bought milk. The next morning I went to work. 12-hour shift. Vitals, IV changes, chart notes, a patient in 4B who held my hand during a breathing treatment and said, "You look tired, sweetheart." I almost lost it right there. Jolene called Monday afternoon. She told me the Easter dinner ended about 20 minutes after I left. Gerald went inside and closed his bedroom door. Denise sat at the table crying until Mrs. Mitchell walked her into the house. Travis didn't come out of his room the rest of the night. By Wednesday, the whole town knew the Thornton family's 25-year secret. I hadn't said a word to anyone. In Collier, 22 witnesses is the same as a billboard on Main Street. By Tuesday, the women at the cut and curl knew. By Wednesday, the men at the hardware store. By Thursday, Pastor Davis's secretary had fielded 3 calls from church members asking if it was true that Gerald Thornton publicly disowned his own biological daughter at Easter. It was true, all of it. Gerald had been a deacon at First Baptist for 11 years. He passed the offering plate. He read scripture on 5th Sundays. He sat in the 3rd pew, left side. In a small town, that seat meant something. Pastor Davis called Gerald on Monday and asked him to come in for a conversation. Gerald refused. So Davis sent a letter, handwritten, on church stationery, and Jolene told me what it said. Until you've made peace with your family, I think it's best you step back from church leadership. Gerald lost the deacon seat. In Collier, that was like losing a public office. People noticed, people talked, people drew conclusions. Travis didn't speak to Gerald for 2 weeks. He started asking Denise questions about Carl Jessup, about the letter, about what was real and what wasn't. Denise gave him half answers. She was good at those. Gerald and Denise stopped sharing a bedroom. Neighbors noticed Denise driving out of town every Thursday morning. Jolene confirmed she'd started seeing a therapist in Macon. And the deed transfer? The lawyer at Harmon and Burke informed Gerald that the document was unenforceable because the property was not in his name and never had been. Gerald owed $1,200 in legal fees for a piece of paper that couldn't do what it promised. $1,200 in a deacon's seat. That's what his Easter announcement cost him. And he still hadn't called me. 2 weeks after Easter, a Saturday, I was at the Dairy Dip on Route 12 with Lily, splitting a vanilla cone because it was warm enough to sit outside, and I had an hour before my shift. The bell on the door chimed. Travis walked in. He saw us before I saw him. I know because when I looked up, he was already standing still, halfway between the counter and our table, hands in his jacket pockets, looking like a man who'd walked into the wrong room and wasn't sure if he should stay. Lily waved. "Uncle Travis." He came over, sat down across from me. Didn't ask permission, didn't order anything. We looked at each other for a long time. "I didn't know, Wanda." "I know. Does this mean we're not... are we still..." "You're still my brother, Travis. Blood or not. You've always been my brother." He looked down at the table. His thumbnail scraped a line in the Formica. "I never said thank you, for any of it. The holidays, the food, taking care of Grandma. You're saying it now." He nodded. Barely. Lily leaned across the table, holding out her plastic spoon. "Uncle Travis, you want some of my ice cream?" Something broke in his face. Not crumbled. Broke clean, like a window letting in light for the first time. His eyes went red. He blinked fast, twice, 3 times, then took the spoon and ate a small bite of vanilla. "Thanks, Lilybug," he said. I won't pretend that fixed anything. Travis and I were a long way from okay. Years of silence and sideways glances don't disappear over a shared ice cream cone. But it was the first time he'd ever looked at me. Really looked, without my father's voice telling him what to see. That was the start, a month after Easter. My phone rang at 7 in the morning. I was just getting off shift, sitting in the hospital parking lot with my eyes closed and the engine running. Gerald. I stared at the screen for 3 rings. Then I answered, "Can we talk?" His voice was different, smaller, like someone had turned the volume down on him permanently. "Yes, but I have conditions." He didn't argue. That alone told me something had changed. I laid it out. 3 rules. Not suggestions, rules. First, he would never say anything about my parentage in front of Lily or any other child. Ever. That night was the last time my daughter would hear those words in his voice. Second, the $600 a month was done. Immediately. If Grandma Ruth or Jolene watched Lily, I'd arrange that directly with them. No more money flowing through his hands. Third, any decision about the house or family property went through Ruth. Not him. Not anymore. Gerald was quiet for a long time. The parking lot was empty. A sparrow landed on my side mirror and flew away. "Okay," he said. "One more thing." I closed my eyes. "I want you to go to counseling. Not for me. For you. Because what you did at that table, you wouldn't have done it if you weren't in pain too." He didn't respond. I heard his breathing, ragged and slow, like a man holding something heavy in his chest. Bye, Dad. I hung up. Drove home, slept 5 hours, picked up Lily, made dinner. 2 weeks later, Jolene called. She tried to sound casual, but I could hear the relief underneath. Your daddy made an appointment, therapist in Macon. Same office as your mama, different doctor. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then, good. That was enough. 6 weeks after Easter. A knock at my apartment door. No text, no call. I looked through the peephole. Denise, alone, holding a shoebox against her chest with both arms, the way you carry something breakable. I opened the door. I didn't invite her in. She looked 10 years older than she had at Easter. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. She was wearing a cardigan I remembered from my childhood, the brown one with the wooden buttons. I kept these, she said, holding out the box. In my closet. Your father didn't know. I took it, looked inside. Photos. Me as a newborn, red-faced and wailing. Me on the first day of kindergarten in a dress Denise had sewn. Me in my nursing graduation cap, grinning so wide my eyes were nearly closed. She'd kept them hidden, like contraband, like proof of a love she was too afraid to show. I know sorry isn't enough, she said. It's not. I held the box against my hip. But I want you to understand something. You didn't just lie to Dad. You took 25 years from me and him, years we could have had. Her face crumpled. She pressed the back of her hand to her mouth. I'm not going to pretend we're okay, I said. But Lily loves you, so I'll let her decide if she wants to see you. Not me, not Dad. Lily. Denise nodded. She set her hand on the doorframe for a moment, then pulled it back. She turned and walked down the stairs. I closed the door, sat on the floor, opened the box again. At the bottom, beneath all the photos, one I'd never seen. Me at 3, sitting on Gerald's shoulders, both of us laughing. On the back, in handwriting I recognized as Grandpa Harold's, Jerry and his little girl, summer 1997. I put it on the refrigerator, right next to Lily's drawing of our apartment, 2 months after Easter, Saturday evening, just the 3 of us, me, Lily, and Ruth. Ruth was making cornbread. Lily stood on a step stool beside her, stirring the batter with a wooden spoon almost as long as her arm. They had flour on their noses. Neither of them cared. I leaned against the kitchen doorframe and watched. This, I thought, this is what family looks like. Not who sits at the head of the table, not whose name is on a deed. This, flour and laughter, and a 6-year-old singing "You Are My Sunshine" off-key, while an 82-year-old woman pretends she's hitting every note. After dinner, Ruth asked me to sit with her on the back porch. The old swing, the one Harold built when Gerald was a boy. It creaked under both of us. You know why I waited, don't you? You wanted him to show himself first. She nodded. If I'd told him 10 years ago, in private, he'd have called me senile. He needed an audience for his cruelty, so I gave him one. Were you scared? Every single day for 25 years. We sat in the quiet. Crickets. The smell of cut grass from the Mitchell yard. Lily's voice drifting through the screen door. Wanda, the house is yours whenever you're ready. Not because of blood. Because you're the one who showed up. Every holiday. Every hospital visit. Every night shift. She rested her hand on mine. You showed up. I know, Grandma. And one more thing. Her eyes narrowed with a humor so dry it could start a fire. Stop paying anyone $400 a month for the privilege of being in your own family. I laughed. She laughed. It was the first real laughter I'd felt in longer than I could measure. The swing creaked. Lily sang. The porch light hummed. I didn't tell you this story so you'd feel sorry for me. I told you because I spent 32 years thinking I had to earn a seat at a table that was never going to save me a place. After Easter, I didn't become a different person overnight. I still work nights. I still eat cereal on my kitchen floor sometimes. I still get tired in ways that sleep doesn't fix. But I stopped writing checks to a man who pocketed half and called it family obligation. That's $4,800 a year I keep now. Enough for the deposit on a 2-bedroom apartment where Lily finally has her own room. She picked the paint color herself, mint green, because it looks like toothpaste, Mommy. I stopped cooking for people who never said thank you. This past Mother's Day, Jolene and I made dinner together at Ruth's. Just us, Lily, and a store-bought pie that was better than anything I'd have baked at 5 a.m. on no sleep. I stopped asking, "Am I enough?" Not because I found the answer, but because I stopped asking the wrong people. Grandma Ruth still watches Lily on my work nights. She won't take $1. "That's what family does," she told me. "The real kind." Gerald and I have seen each other 3 times since Easter. Short visits, awkward pauses. He doesn't know what to say, and I'm not going to teach him. But the last time, he brought Lily a stuffed rabbit from the dollar store. Purple, with one crooked ear. She sleeps with it every night. It's not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it's something. And something is more than I had at that Easter table. I sat on that porch with my grandmother, listening to my daughter sing inside a house full of ghosts and cornbread. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a guest. That's my story. Or at least, that's where it is right now. I don't know what Thanksgiving will look like. I don't know if my father and I will ever sit at the same table without that Easter hanging between us. But I know this. Lily will never sit at a table where someone tells her she doesn't belong. That's my line, and I don't cross it. If this story hit close to home, leave a comment. Not about me, about you. What's your Easter table moment? And if you want more stories like this, there's one in the description I think you need to hear. Thank you for staying with me. I'll see you next time.